Good evening once again, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of Live Chat with James. Of course, as always, coming to you from the studios here in Vancouver, British Columbia at ProPix TV. Welcome again to another episode. Tonight we're going to talk about the LA riots and the protests going on and Donald Trump's response, as well as the fact that ICE raids essentially are the ones that set this off, and their failure to back down is of course what kept it going all weekend. Now, in addition, we'll talk about the current situation of the wildfires in British Columbia, Alberta, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Ontario, and elsewhere as they rage across the country. We'll also take a look at the G7 summit coming up next week in Kananaskis country in Alberta, Canada, right along the edge of the Rocky Mountains, a picturesque location. But what happens there may be far from postcard perfect. Narendra Modi has been invited by Mark Carney of Canada. He will attend. He has confirmed his attendance there. But whether or not this political and geopolitical reset overlooks the human rights abuses in India, the transnational repression and foreign interference on behalf of the government of India, and of course the assassination of Hardeep Singh Nijjar. Whether these issues will be brought up at the G7, we'll have to wait and see. Of course, if Mark Carney was going to be discussing those, he probably would not say so publicly in advance, because at that point it allows Modi to cancel his trip. At the end of the day, I do believe it's an essential time and an essential opportunity for both leaders to meet face to face to try and work towards resolving some of the issues and the tension between our nations. But let's go back to the top story. Of course, we're talking about Los Angeles and what's going on there. It is a weekend, or has been a weekend, of chaos and upset throughout the region as ICE officers on Friday started to do raids at workplaces and other locations throughout certain areas of Los Angeles. Now, the scenes that I'm seeing over the weekend really bring sadness to my heart, because I was there to see the aftermath of the riots of 1992, the Rodney King riots, the Watts riots, whatever you want to call them, but it was catastrophic in terms of the businesses that were damaged. And it wasn't big box stores, it wasn't the big conglomerates and corporations, it was the mom and pop shops. Those are the ones that suffered the most during the riots in the early 90s. Now, it has taken decades for Los Angeles to rebuild. And I'm not just talking about the physical structures. I'm talking about the trust and the relationship between government and the citizens, between the LAPD, LA Sheriff's Department, and again, the citizens. It has been a long road to healing between different communities. It has been a long road to rebuild the physical structures, but also a sense of safety within the communities. As these targeted raids by ICE are going after primarily, or majority-wise, they're going after the Hispanic community. And of course, we know that community is very large in Los Angeles. In the media, of course, Trump and his cronies are making all kinds of statements that are untrue, unfounded, and meant to not only bring chaos further to the process, but also to bring anger and division between the community. Trump's administration so far is trying to give an appearance that it is all unlawful, illegal migrants that are out there doing the protests, that are causing violence, that are just doing the chaos. So let's break that down into the reality. Chances are you're not going to understand a lot of what you're seeing in the media, as there's a lot of misinformation, especially as it comes to Donald Trump and the administration trying to put it off on illegals and others. Now, let's take a look at some of the Twitter feed that Trump's been throwing out there, or retweets from his Truth Social, which is far from the truth. Now, let's go on. There it is. Okay, Trump in this tweet sent out, and it says, "It has come to my attention that last night during their performance of the Grammy Music, so-called rock band Fishbone..." Oh, sorry, okay. My apologies, that was the wrong tweet, but again, worth checking out. And where did all of Trump's tweets go? Look at that. Isn't it funny how they just disappeared here? But in any event, he is blaming the illegals for the riots. He is really pushing a narrative that there are essentially domestic terrorists at work in terms of the protests. He's also claiming that they are paid to be there, which again is not true either. These are people who are upset with what's going on in the community. He is somebody who is saying that the protesters cannot wear masks, and yet it's perfectly fine for the ICE agents to wear masks, and going even further, that there are no visible identifiers on most of the ICE agents in all of these raids throughout the country. My theory on why this happens is because they know that they are following orders, but they know that that is no excuse for illegal activity and actions. Therefore, they are going against the Constitution of the United States of America. When they are doing so, there's a good chance that down the road they could face a judge and be called before them. This is already lining up the opportunity for the ICE officers to say, well, you can't see my face, so therefore, you can't prove that it was me because you don't see a name badge, you don't see a badge number, you don't see a lot of things. So again, it is a major concern that they get to act with impunity, and it is not acceptable. Now, anti-ICE protesters are blocking both sides of the 101 freeway over the weekend, and that was near the Alameda Street exit, and that's downtown Los Angeles. Other protests have been going on in New York City and other regions that are just really picking up the numbers and gaining support in terms of standing up and saying no more. Now, let's see if we can find some more of the actual information I was looking for on Trump's statements, in between finding all of the pictures of him with his best friend there, Mr. Epstein. And of course, we know he denies his involvement with Epstein, but again, there's a reason why they are taking they're taking all of this action at this point. So again, just ridiculous. They are failing to provide those reports and that information, I believe, because they need lots of time to be able to edit Donald Trump's name out of those documents regarding the Epstein files. So again, it's gotta be encouraged for people to actually pay attention to what's going on. Now, there was a journalist also that was shot with a rubber bullet down in Los Angeles while she was live on the air. She was clearly a reporter, a journalist. She had her cameraman there. She had her microphone. She was very clearly in the line of sight of the officers that shot the rubber bullet. It appears that it was a very deliberate and intentional shot at the media overall. Like, this is not acceptable. You cannot be shooting the reporters and journalists that are reporting on information. Now, when you go further to that, there's also a call by Trump and his cronies to have the founder of the Midas Touch Network, and I'm sure you're familiar with them, an amazing group of individuals doing amazing work, great reporting on the, I would say on Donald Trump, but more about his, about Donald Trump's corruption and other reasons of concern. But Trump wants him arrested because they reported about the location of some of the ICE agents or National Guard, whoever it was, on the roof of buildings. And that is out in public. It was not a covert operation. And for them to be claiming that that Midas Touch and the reporters, journalists, and founders were giving away locations of ICE agents, placing them at harm. Well, do you know what? If ICE had not started this whole mess and would have backed down and let things calm down, then we wouldn't have an issue. Now, going beyond that, if you look at the simple fact that it is not illegal to film in public, it is not illegal to film the police rolling in and taking action against protesters, most of which I will say are peaceful protesters. There are a few lunatics in there. And again, Trump trying to push a narrative about the people that are there, and that they're, you know, just basically domestic terrorists or foreign terrorists, that they are coming out from different locations on behalf of you know, the Democrats. I mean, the whole argument is just absolutely ridiculous. Now, that reporter that I spoke of was from Australia. She was hit directly with that rubber bullet from a short distance, so close range. Absolutely no way that they didn't know she was a reporter. Just plain and simple, no way on earth did they not realize that she was in the midst of doing a report. It is just another way to intimidate and try to scare the media away from covering the illegal activities of this Trump administration. Completely disgusting actions and should not be tolerated. Now, let's go back to our information on Donald Trump and his recent tweets. Now, he's stated at one point, let's see, this one here was 060925 at 12:16 a.m. He tweeted, "Looking really bad in LA. Bring in the troops." Then he's talking about, sorry, just going on to the next one. Then, of course, he's talking about people wearing masks. Well, A, it's going to help if they're getting pepper sprayed. B, yeah, some protesters may not want their identity known. Some of them for, you know, legitimate reasons, and maybe others are not so legitimate in terms of the reasons why they're not showing their face. But at the end of the day, this is all due to illegal activity by the Trump administration, bringing in the National Guard, stripping the state of California and the city of Los Angeles of their powers to handle their crowds. And then at the same time, because you have to understand that this is federal jurisdiction now, the ICE agents and the National Guard are involved. The LAPD and the state police in California and the CHP cannot go in and work against the ICE agents or the FBI and the National Guard. It is now a federal jurisdiction, which means that the LAPD technically has to stand down and let the other teams do their work. Now, of course, in doing so, the LAPD does have some responsibility in the region, which they are more than adequately dealing with. But again, their hands are tied when it comes to any type of control, command, and plan implementation when it comes to the protesters. That, again, the plan is being handled by the federal government, Donald Trump, and the National Guard. So it strips away the powers and the authority from the state of California and ultimately from the city of Los Angeles, which is illegal in itself. Moving on to that, he then goes and criticizes the mayor of Los Angeles as well as Governor Newsom, when he knows damn well that it is his problem that he created. It is his problem that has kept the riots going. It is Trump's problem that he has initiated the entire violent protests because of his illegal activities in these ICE raids and by bringing in the National Guard. So again, there could have been opportunity to de-escalate the entire situation, but Trump chose the other way, to instead incite anger and raise emotions even further. And in doing so, he knows damn well that people are going to get hurt and that it is definitely not the right action to take. Now, of course, he was very quick in bringing in the National Guard to deal with the riots in Los Angeles. But of course, he had no frickin' thoughts of bringing the National Guard in to deal with the January 6th insurrectionists. And I might add that at this time, the Proud Boys, a group of them who were involved in the protests or the insurrection, I'm going to call it what it was. It was an illegal insurrection, an attempt to take over the Capitol and overthrow the government. That's exactly what January 6th was, no matter what Trump wants people to believe. But a group that he pardoned are now suing the U.S. government for $100 million because of their rights being violated, illegally charged and prosecuted by lunatic judges, as Trump calls them. So again, now the payoff is in. We knew that Trump was, or we suspected that Trump was involved in calling all the shots to get the insurrection to happen. We know that he stood by with his finger up his ass instead of dealing with it. He didn't have any care, or concern, or desire to control the situation. He instead just had his cronies and activists and Proud Boys and everybody else just try to take over the Capitol building. And as such, he pardoned them. And now they're getting paid out millions of dollars in settlements. More lawsuits are being launched, including this one by the Proud Boys for $100 billion. And the lawyers are being directed to settle lawsuits. They are not even instructed to negotiate the claim amounts, instead just settling for the entire amount with no negotiation. To me, that smells desperately of the payoff that Trump wants to ensure that his supporters get for the insurrection of January the 6th. So, of course, it appears that being pardoned for their illegal activities and their treasonous actions, apparently that doesn't matter. Let's pay them for it from the pockets of everyday American citizens, because that's where the money's coming from. At the end of the day, for the $5 million settlement that's already happened, for other settlements that have happened, and for the $100 million and other settlements that are about to happen, it's just ridiculous. Now, Donald Trump also tweeted here, Jim McDonald, the highly respected LAPD chief, just stated that the protesters are getting very much more aggressive, and that he would have to reassess the situation as it pertains to bringing in the troops. He should right now. Don't let these thugs get away with this. Make America great again. Again, Trump trying to put his spin on the fact that the LAPD was contemplating whether or not the National Guard should be brought in, because they were looking at ways to de-escalate, not to incite the violence further. But again, it was taken out of control of the state of California and the LAPD calling the shots because ICE, Donald Trump, and the National Guard instead were calling the game plan. Highly illegal actions on both sides, I would say, when it comes to the violent protests, the people that are burning vehicles and such, but the vast majority are just people upset trying to have their voices heard over these illegal raids and all the actions being taken by ICE and Donald Trump that are against the Constitution and the right to due process. Again, people are getting upset, they're getting angered, and I think that protests across the country are going to just do nothing but increase and be more frequent. And I also believe that there are going to be a lot of protests worldwide showing support for the everyday Americans who are being targeted by Trump, his lies, corruption, and theft from the taxpayers. Now, there are a few people with flags, as I stated. There is a person with a Palestinian flag. Again, this one person is showing up on about 200 different tweet feeds, and Trump and his administration are really using this to push the narrative that it's the Palestinian terrorists and everybody else that are responsible for these riots. And instead, he's totally missing the point, and that it is against his processes, his agenda, and his plan. And that's what they're protesting, is the lack of legal due process. Now, Donald Trump also went on to, with an exclamation point, putting paid insurrectionists, again, that was from the real Donald Trump, so the official Donald Trump tweet. He is just really pushing this narrative that it's paid insurrectionists, that it is terrorists, that it's this and that, instead of just understanding that the American people are pissed off. They are feeling let down. They are feeling abandoned by their own government. They feel like the government has taken control. Instead of leading the nation, they are basically dictating and running a dictatorship, telling people how they must live. Now, again, people were yelling at them as they shot that reporter that was in from Australia reporting. Again, people were yelling and swearing about that because they have absolutely no right to be shooting at journalists, and anybody else at that short range, rubber bullets or not, can still cause extreme injury. Especially when it was a protest. There was not a violent mob coming at them. It was a protest moving forward, but not violently towards them. I don't see where they had a right or should have utilized that tool in their toolbox. Now let's go on again. Another Trump post tweet is, great job by the National Guard in Los Angeles after 2 days of violence, clashes, and unrest. We have an incompetent Governor Newsom. And again, back to the baby childish name calling again. Donald Trump just won't fucking grow up. But then you've got Mayor Bass, who he picks on next, who were, as usual, just look how they handled the fires. And now they're very slow. Permitting disaster. Again, the federal authorities took control, and that is an instance that is being initiated by ICE and by the National Guard. But he's going to try to blame the others for his inaction and his illegal activities. So again, he claims that these radical left protests by instigators and often paid troublemakers will not be tolerated. Also, from now on, masks will not be allowed to be worn at protests. Okay, next, he does not have the legal authority to tell people they cannot wear masks at protest. It just is not right, unless, of course, you're in, North Korea, or you're in Russia, or you're in China. And that's exactly how Trump wants to run his government, as a dictatorship. He does not want it to be a democracy anymore, and Trump needs to get his head out of his ass and realize that it's time to retire and resign, in my opinion. But again, a lot of people would disagree with me on that. But he also goes on, as I said, about the masks not being allowed to wear at protests. And again, I believe that ICE is wearing the masks and failing to wear any type of name or badge number identifiers because of the fact that they know that they are going to be dragged into court at some point and made to answer for the actions. Again, they claim they are for following orders, but at the end of the day, they are not to follow orders that are given against the Constitution of the United States and against the rights of individuals. Again, their first and foremost is the oath to the country and the citizens they serve. It is not an oath to Donald Trump to be his personal Gestapo, and that's exactly what's going on. So then Trump goes on, what do these people have to hide and why? Again, referring to the masks. Well, what do your agents have to hide and why are they hiding? Have you hired some of your Proud Boys to go in and work for ICE to round up illegal migrants? And that's why you're catching legal migrants, citizens, residents. Is that why? Because you have untrained idiots that were part of the insurrection on January 6th giving them jobs? I don't know, but I would sure love to find out. Now, he also goes on to say again, thank you to the National Guard for a job well done. Once again, had they have used proper de-escalation tactics and methods, they could have calmed things down a lot sooner. Plain and simple, that is the truth and the reality of it. Now, let's take a look at a letter that has been sent to, that was sent to the Honorable Pete Hegseth, Secretary of Defense. This is on June the 8th, and it was sent by Governor Newsom. Now it says on January the 7th, 2025, President Trump issued a memorandum to your office entitled Department of Defense Security for the protection of the Department of Homeland Security functions. The memorandum purports to invoke 10 U.S.C. subsection 12406 to call into federal service members and units of the National Guard to temporarily protect ICE and other United States government personnel who are performing federal functions, including the enforcement of federal law and to protect federal property. The memorandum further directs actions as necessary for the Secretary of Defense to coordinate with the governors of the states and the National Guard Bureau in identifying and ordering into federal service the appropriate members and units of the National Guard under his authority. Again, this is Governor Newsom responding and sending this email to Pete Hegseth. He goes on to say Section 12406 states that the President may call into federal service members and units of the National Guard of any state in such numbers as considers necessary. Apologies, folks. Let me just reset this. Apologize for that, folks. So let's start the next paragraph I get over here. Now, Section 12406 states that the President may call into federal service members and units of the National Guard of any state in such numbers as he considers necessary. 2, number 1, repel an invasion of the United States by a foreign nation. Number 2, suppress a rebellion against the authority of the government of the United States. Or 3, execute laws of the United States when the President is unable to do so with regular forces. Section 12406 further states that the orders for these purposes shall be issued through the governors of the states. So again, this is overreach by the government of the United States and Donald Trump. Again, illegal deployment of the National Guard, when instead they should have stood down and let the LAPD and Sheriff's Department come in and deal with their citizens, because they would have been able to handle it in a less emotional and confrontational way. These ICE agents are just basically the Gestapo, and they are not leaving the room required for local police and state police, as well as government officials at the local and state level, to deal with it. Instead, they are just going in, riding roughshod, and acting like a bunch of bulls in a china shop, essentially. Now, the letter from the Office of the Governor Newsom went on. This is again from the Governor of California, and it's sent out to Pete Hegseth. Now, the next part of this says, last night, the Adjutant General of California received a memorandum from your office with the subject line, calling members of the California National Guard. And hold please, I got to go to the next page here. Bring up the next one. Okay, so, and I've got my glasses on so I can read. They say it's age, but maybe they're right. Okay, bring the National Guard into federal service, which states that 2,000 members of the California National Guard will be called into the federal service effective immediately for a period of 60 days. Notably, this directive was not issued through the governor of the state as required under Section 12406. The governor, nor was it approved or ordered by the governor of California. This anticipates coordination with the governors of the states in identifying and ordering units of the National Guard into federal service. So again, it was illegal, highly illegal for the U.S. government and the President of the United States to order in the National Guard. That is a responsibility to be done by the governor and in coordination with the governor. Goes on to say, at present, law enforcement authorities from the city and county of Los Angeles are safeguarding public safety and, as demonstrated by the robust law enforcement resources, are sufficient to maintain order. In dynamic and fluid situations, such as the one in Los Angeles, state and local authorities are the most appropriate ones to evaluate the need for resources to safeguard life and property. Indeed, the decision to deploy the National Guard without appropriate training or orders risks seriously escalating the situation. Again, acknowledging that they have not been trained and directed properly on how to deal with this situation. There is currently no need for the National Guard to be deployed in Los Angeles, and to do so in this unlawful manner and for such a lengthy period is a serious breach of the state's sovereignty that seems intentionally designed to inflame personnel and resources where they are truly required. simultaneously depriving the state from deploying these personnel and resources where they are truly required. And again, that could be anywhere from the forest fires and other requirements of the state. Accordingly, we ask that you immediately rescind your order and return the National Guard to its rightful control by the state of California to be deployed as appropriate and when necessary. This was sent from the governor of California's office, Gavin Newsom, and it was signed by David Sapp, who's the Legal Affairs Secretary. So once again, just clearly outlining why it is illegal, the actions that the Trump administration has taken in deploying the National Guard into the state of California. Further, they are dealing with a potential riot with protests and the like, and for the federal government to state they need 60 days of the military or the National Guard to be called up to federal control and to be able to do as they please in the state of California for the next 2 months is unheard of. It is illegal. It breaches the sovereignty of the state and the laws that are set out in the state of California and the federal level of the United States of America. It shows again that Trump and his administration have absolutely no respect for the laws of the land, that they feel that they are able to rewrite the law, rewrite the Constitution, and ignore the rights of their citizens. Again, just a disgusting mess in Los Angeles. The LAPD and the LA Sheriff's Department are more than adequately trained and supplied, equipped to deal with this issue. It is not like 1992. They learned from that. They have taken a lot of lessons from other riots and instances that have happened over the decades since the 92 riots, and they are prepared and ready. Unfortunately, by deploying the National Guard and giving the authority and the jurisdiction over to the federal government, totally undermines and takes away that right and that ability for the LAPD, the Sheriff's Department, and the state office of law enforcement to deal with this situation in a calmer, more rational way. And again, ICE agents and the National Guard are only meant to infuriate, to inflict more division, more hatred, more anger, and more targeted violence against individuals. So again, Trump needs to, first of all, rescind that order, and Pete Hegseth, again, the order to take over the national, or the reserves there, the guard there in California. Again, totally illegal and inappropriate at this point. They have taken jurisdiction away from the state and the local law enforcement to deal with their matters that they are best addressed to deal with. So again, Trump needs to get the hell out of Los Angeles in as far as these riots. Once again, you're seeing this individual with the Palestinian flag standing on burnt car, and really, riding around on a bike, just all these different scenes, but it's the same guy in almost every one of those images. And that's being massively distributed online by Trump, by his administration, by his social media representatives, and of course all of his mega nut followers. So again, it is really a manipulation of media, manipulation of facts, misinformation and disinformation intentionally being spread by Donald J. Trump and the Trump administration. Again, this guy just needs to be impeached and removed from office along with his vice co-dictator. And yeah, enough is enough already. California needs to be able to enjoy the beautiful city that it is and not face threats from their own federal government. And that's exactly what's going on at this point. Let's move on though, folks. We got a few other topics to discuss. We'll keep them brief and keep the flow of the show, as they say. Now, of course, we know that the G7 summit is coming up next week in Kananaskis country in Alberta, in Alberta, Canada. Kananaskis is just not far in between or from Calgary and Banff. It is a picturesque, beautiful place located just in the Rocky Mountains, at the base of the Rocky Mountains in Canada. Beautiful, beautiful place. Now, of course, the big controversy this week, whether it is from the World Sikh Organization or others, have concern that Mark Carney, the Prime Minister of Canada, has invited Narendra Modi from India to come to the G7 to participate in meetings that are planned around different issues such as global security, the current crisis in Ukraine, the crisis in the Middle East, and many other topics of security, safety, as well as trade, the world economy, the instability of a Trump administration. Even though Donald Trump is going to be there, hopefully they set him in the corner at the kids' table with a box of crayons and a coloring book, because we know he can't read, so no point in giving him a copy of Harry Potter. Besides that, he will want wizards to start taking over to deal with the riots in Los Angeles anyway if he read Harry Potter. Now, back to the issue is that they're looking at a geopolitical reset in the tensions that have been going on between Canada and India. This, of course, stems back to the assassination of Hardeep Singh Nijjar in Surrey, British Columbia. Now, it has been alleged that the India government had taken part in the ordering of the assassination of Mr. Nijjar at the Gurdwara in Surrey, British Columbia. As such, other staff members from the Modi administration and from the Modi government were also identified directly in the accusations. With that said, the tensions between Canada and India went to hell in a handbasket ever since. Diplomats were expelled from both nations, and it's just been a complete mess. Now, the other problem is that the Modi government was not very cooperative in helping with furthering the investigation of those who were involved in the assassination of Hardeep Singh Nijjar, as well as the attempted assassination in the U.S. of Mr. Panun. But again, that was a U.S. issue, and of course they cooperated much more with the United States because they see him as a bigger threat to India and their economy. So again, they cooperated more with the U.S. than they did with Canada. Now, this is going to be very interesting. The question really is whether or not Mark Carney is going to bring up human rights in India, the transnational repression of India, the foreign interference in Canadian politics by India, as well as all of these other issues that are really important between the two nations and for the people of India. With that said, we don't anticipate that there's going to be a lot of talk on those subjects. But again, at the end of the day, I think it's very essential that this face-to-face meeting happen, whether or not they address these urgent issues at that time, or it is a stepping stone to move forward to open lines of communication and further cooperation. I think that either way, I think it's a benefit. So again, we'll see how this works out with Modi arriving in Canada next week. With that said, the Sikhs for Justice is calling on the Sikh community across Canada and the U.S. to come up to Kananaskis in the Canadian Rockies to protest and to rally to really get the point home to Narendra Modi that the world diaspora is watching him, that they are still standing proud and tall against his transnational repression, against his human rights abuses against the Sikhs and other minorities in India, and they want their voices heard. And by Canada inviting Narendra Modi to the G7 summit, that gives an opportunity for the Sikhs to protest and rally to make their voices heard. The one logistical issue, of course, is that Kananaskis is also selected as a location for these international events and summits with world leaders because there is very restricted access in and out of Kananaskis. It gives them an easier ability to control the flow of who enters and who exits the community and to keep tabs on security. Now, this is also going to be a logistical issue because of the fact of all of these people that are anticipated to be there for the G7, all of the international media, and then you put on top of that protesters and rally goers. It's going to put a lot of strain on the local infrastructure, as Kananaskis is not a big city or even a big town. It is quite small, so therefore the infrastructure for this type of mass tourism, so to speak, is not really there. So again, it's going to cause some there. Tight security, let God do it then. Well, you know what? I think it's important that even if it's in the streets of Vancouver, in the streets of Toronto, Ottawa, Calgary, I think the message will still get through to Modi through the evening news. So again, I truly believe there's an opportunity for the Sikh community, for Hindus who may be disfranchised with the India government or otherwise. I think there's a lot of opportunity for voices to be heard. And again, for the diaspora to make sure that their presence is known. Yeah, other than that, they have taken precautions, of course, for security, but also for wildfire precautions and everything else. So again, it is something that we in Canada take great pride in, and that is ensuring that guests of our country are looked after and taken care of when it comes to security, making sure that you know, there are several different contingency plans in place, and to ensure that the people who arrive in Canada are here to experience a welcoming and diplomatic and diplomacy that we have here. Democratic society, welcoming society, and again, we want to deal with these issues, but again, it's got to be done in a peaceful manner in order to find any sustainable long-term solutions. But I do believe that, yes, Mr. Punin is correct in the statement that we need to protest and make sure that voices are heard, for the simple fact that human rights are continually being abused in India, and that needs to stop. 555 Farang Leo, welcome back. Glad to see you. A perfect avalanche or rockfall will come down and leave an orange puddle. Well, wouldn't that be something? It'd be like the day after Halloween when the kids set off firecrackers in the pumpkins. Oh my goodness. Yes, I do believe that there will probably be a lineup of people looking to protest, different people arriving, such as I said, Narendra Modi, but again, Donald Trump as well. And I don't think that he is going to receive a warm welcome in Canada. People do not like Donald Trump in Canada for the most part. There are some people that support him, of course, but again, overall, people are just disgusted by him. He is... you know, as I said, pumpkins. I mean, people should have known before they voted that the only time you see orange faces, they are scary. They are jack-o'-lanterns. They are at Halloween. And that's where they belong, not in the White House. And so there you go. That's my thoughts on it. But yeah, I do think there will be protests and rallies across the nation if Donald Trump, or when Donald Trump arrives. And I hope that they are very peaceful and really promote the peaceful process that comes with protesting, because it's essential that the message not get lost and not give the other side the opportunity to use it to create a negative narrative. So again, it's very important. I hear he is flying in and out of Canada daily. That is quite possible. Again, I don't know the exact plans, nor do I care personally how he gets here, when he gets here, you know, how frequently he comes in and out of Canada. You know, I'm just always happy to see him leave. It's a sad day to see him return, I guess you could say. And let's face it, I mean, you know, it is just disgusting. Now, in 1997, I was responsible for a vast majority of the transportation of world leaders and delegates for the 1997 APEC Summit. So I do understand a lot of the security, a lot of the protocols, a lot of how they work it. But again, it is something that, yeah, I'm very proud of our nation, the way we look after foreign diplomats and delegates, regardless as to whether we like them, whether or not we agree with them. Just the fact that we are Canada and we want them to feel welcome to be here. Even if we disagree, we want them to feel welcome to come to Canada, to enjoy what Canada has to offer, and to have discussions about the differences. And I think that's the big part, is opening the door to those face-to-face discussions. That is just so essential right now, and that's what I hope happens throughout the G7. Of course, there's a lot of other urgent matters that need addressing at the G7 as well. So we'll leave that for now. We will be watching and checking in with it. Unfortunately, our budget doesn't allow to go to Kananaskis to cover it. We've got our resources deployed elsewhere. But again, so our budget doesn't allow for that, or I would definitely go. But that is the way it rolls, because we've got other commitments right now on other massive investigative stories that we are working on. So yeah, that is where we are at. Now, speaking of the US, speaking of Canada, speaking of silliness, there are individuals in the United States, and I love conspiracy theories because they always entertain me. Conspiracy theorists are people that have no real understanding of reality in a lot of cases, and they just come up with the stupidest things. And this one here is, if it wasn't so stupid, it would be it would be scary, but it is so ridiculous. There are people in the US now, these conspiracy theorists, that say that Canada right now, the smoke crossing the Canadian border into the US from the wildfires, they're claiming that it's not a result of wildfires. Liked the live. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Farang, or maybe it's Mrs. I'm not sure. It's Farang Leo Canada. Thanks again. But yeah, so they are saying, or accusing Canada of burning chemicals and sending that smoke across the border to impact Americans. Like, come on, really? We're not going to be burning chemicals and sending them across. We can do that by just giving you a case of Canadian beer. It'll have the same effect. You'll be screwed up, but hey, in the morning, at least with the chemicals, you wouldn't have a hangover. But at the end of the day, seriously, of course we're not burning chemicals and sending the smoke to the US. Right now, we do have devastating wildfires going from coast to coast, and it is a time of emergency and time of preparedness for people across the nation. In the provinces of Manitoba and Saskatchewan, who so far are the worst hit when it comes to the wildfires, and the size, scope, and frequency or number of fires. Several people have been arrested in the prairies as a result of arson, setting some of the fires intentionally. So again, we hope that the courts throw the book at them, and hopefully it's not a matchbook. These individuals were accused of setting the fires. They've been arrested by the Royal Canadian Mounted Police and will face their day in court. With that said, as I was covering, Alberta is seeing wildfires. British Columbia is seeing wildfires. Ontario is seeing wildfires, and other provinces and territories. But most impacted, again, declaring states of emergency, are both the provinces of Manitoba and Saskatchewan. People are losing their homes, structures are building, businesses are being lost, and the catastrophic impacts on the environment, on agriculture, and other areas are of massive concern. Now, of other concern, of course, are things such as the wildlife ecosystems that are being impacted, whether that is for protected species or our regular wildlife species. It can be catastrophic, destroying hundreds of thousands of acres, if not millions of acres of prime land for them to graze on, to basically have their homes being completely destroyed. Of course, with that said, the majority of people, if you have not seen forest fires with high winds, cannot comprehend the speed at which those fires can spread. How fast they can move down or up a mountainside and through a valley. And of course, that means that sometimes animals cannot outrun the flames. They just can't. It's impossible. Or that fires get flared up and it creates basically a big pocket. So you'll have a big circle of fire that's working its way inwards and trapping all of the wildlife at the center. So again, the impacts on our wildlife, on the ecology, on the environment, on climate change, on the human toll, the emotional toll, the financial toll, the homes, the businesses, the history, the contents in the homes that are family heirlooms that are being lost is just catastrophic right now. We cannot urge people enough who are watching, have a go kit. In your go kit for evacuation, you should have blankets, pillows, or at least blankets anyway. Lots of water, essentially 3 liters a day per person minimum. You should have some dehydrated or canned foods as well to have in your emergency kit. Flashlight, flares, AM, FM radio if you can get your hands on one. And that's because you're not necessarily going to maintain a cell connection if there are wildfires taking out antennas and the likes. Now, also keep in mind that if you and your family are in a community being impacted by wildfires, you should have another person outside of the region in which all of you will check in frequently with. This way, if you do lose cellular service and you get separated, or if it's different parts of the family that may not live in the same household, but as everybody's evacuating, when you get to safety checkpoints, you can always call and check in with a central person that can let you know that others have checked in, or just to keep tabs to make sure everybody has at least been safely evacuated and which areas, because you don't necessarily end up at the same evacuation centers. Even though you may have family at one, a different, if you and your kids are at one location, your grandparents or your parents and the children's grandparents are at another, you may not end up at the same evacuation center when you leave. So therefore, again, it's so important to keep open line of communication with a third party outside of the disaster area so that everybody can pass messages back and forth if they lose cellular communication or internet communication. So again, really take it safe, take it easy, follow the evacuation orders, follow the fire risk hazard signs. Right now in areas such as Banff and the Kananaskis region, it is at extreme wildfire dangers throughout British Columbia, as well as we are in a very early summer heat wave. It is very warm in Metro Vancouver and throughout the province of British Columbia, causing, of course, the fire risk to be much greater. As the fire risk increases, again, people need to be responsible. They need to make sure that if there are fire bans in place, they don't go against the fire bans. Number 2, if you're out hiking or out on the local trails, out at national parks, provincial parks, regional parks, wherever you are, if you are smoking, whether it's cigarettes or other stuff, take a small container with you with some water in it with a lid that secures, so you can put your cigarette butts or your roaches or whatever else in there to ensure that they are extinguished, and then just take them with you instead of throwing them in the forest anyway. Again, just some tips that way. When you prepare your emergency kit, once again, ensure that you include cash, because not everywhere is going to have access to ATMs, and the ATM networks could be taken down if the cellular service is not available as well. So again, keep that in mind that you may want to have cash on hand, because you may not be able to use your credit cards or debit cards in the situation of emergencies. Now, also in disaster points, you want to ensure that you have any medication that's ready to go. Keep in mind that that's not only for yourself and your family, but also if you have any pets that require medication, you want to make sure that's all ready to go if you need to evacuate. Once more, you also want to make sure, I believe I said it, but if not, you want to have all of your identification. You want to have your home, all your documentation for your home, including your insurance documents, so that this way you can get the quickest access to the insurance company and claim services if that is required. Hopefully that doesn't come to a point that you need to file a claim on your insurance, because that's never a good thing in the position of forest fires. But again, be prepared just in case. Other things to keep in mind is that you may want to make sure that if your children or pets have a favorite toy or a favorite blanket or whatever the case is, maybe a little dog bed, whatever it is, if you can fit those in the vehicle, I strongly recommend it. It will help at the evacuation center and later on to relieve some of the anxiety and stress that children and the pets feel. Always best to be completely honest and upfront with your children. Don't be afraid to say you don't know what's going on. If you are, for example, in a shelter and they're asking about the home, just be honest, because at the end of the day, this may be, a first-time experience being evacuated and facing a natural disaster or national disaster, regional disaster, whatever the case is. It may be the first time that your children are experiencing it, but it may not be the last. If you are not open and honest and just frank with them on it, and there's a way to, hold back information, but don't lie about it, because if there is a future emergency, it's going to have they're going to have less confidence in you and trust in you to be able to handle the emergency, and that the information you're giving them is correct in any future emergency situations. So again, just be honest with your kids. You don't have to be graphically freak them out, but again, just tell them that what's going on in a sensitive manner for their age. Make sure it's age appropriate, and of course, don't be afraid to tell them that you don't know, because then it also gives them validation that it's okay not to know what's going on. As long as you're together as a family, everybody's safe. At the end of the day, that is the biggest priority. Other than that, folks, I want to thank you for again tuning in to another live chat with James. We will be back again tomorrow night at approximately somewhere between 12:30 a.m. and 1 a.m. We'll start the show, and you're more than welcome to log in. Again, if you are following, don't forget to hit the notification buttons so that you can be notified when we go live. With that said, for anybody watching this on the rebroadcast, whether that's on TikTok or YouTube or Substack or anywhere else, by all means, feel free to add your comments to the comments section, because I do review those and I appreciate it. But also don't forget that when you are there during the live sessions, I love the interaction. I love the comments that come in. Tonight it was 555 Farang, Leo Canada. Once again, thanks for being a part of the show. You like to comment, you like to be here. So I assume, and I love having you here. So thanks again, Farang, Leo Canada, for being a part of the show tonight. And hopefully that encourages others to start getting involved in the live chats, because they're pretty quiet usually. But again, the show gets shadow banned in a lot of regions. As you can see, it just happens that way, and there's not much I can do about that. So I just come on, even for the small live audience. I love being here. I appreciate you tuning in. And again, we'll post it for rebroadcast as well. So take care, everyone. Have a great day. If you're in British Columbia, enjoy the beautiful sunshine, as the rain is coming back later in the week. So enjoy the sunshine while you can. And most importantly, folks, stay safe out there. And one thing I always told my kids as they grew up is that no matter what other people think of you, if you can look in the mirror at the end of the day and be proud of who's looking back at you, that is true success in life. It's not about money. It's not about physical and material items. It's about if you can be proud of the person looking back at you in the mirror at the end of every day. Take care, everyone. Stay safe. Thanks for tuning in.